On Thanksgiving, my parents cut me off and secretly drained my savings to buy my brother some dream place. But everything flipped when FBI trucks flooded the street, agents swarmed the house, and my parents and golden boy brother were dragged out in front of the neighbors while their arrest played live on TV for the whole city to watch. Can you believe it? They completely disowned me on Thanksgiving, then bought my brother a luxury lake house with my money. What they didn't realize was that their betrayal had just landed them all in prison, exposing a web of deceit that stretched far beyond anything I could have ever imagined. My name is Alex, and I was 32 when my own father, Robert, looked me dead in the eye on Thanksgiving Day and told me he didn't have a son. You have no idea how those gut-wrenching words would kick off an FBI investigation, leading them straight to their million-dollar lake house and uncovering a felony that put my entire family behind bars. Every trip home used to be a pilgrimage. That 2-hour drive from the concrete jungle of Manhattan to the quiet, tree-lined streets of my suburban New Jersey hometown was my escape. With each mile, I could feel the knots in my shoulders loosen. I'd roll down the windows of my BMW, letting the cool November air blow away the city grime. I was a senior investment banker at Morgan Stanley, living a life of high-stakes meetings, billion-dollar deals, and the kind of pressure that grinds you down. This drive? It was my way back to being just Alex, the brother, the son. This year, I felt an almost desperate pull towards home. I'd just wrapped up a brutal 6-month contract that, while a huge success for the company, had left me completely drained. All I craved was the scent of my dad's wood-burning fireplace, the taste of my mom's roasted turkey, and the comfortable, if sometimes annoying, banter with my younger brother, Mark. I pictured it all, the warmth, the laughter, the feeling of belonging. That was the real bonus I was looking forward to, something no amount of money could buy. I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, a classic 2-story colonial with a welcoming red front door, adorned with an autumn leaf wreath I knew my mom had hung. Everything looked perfect, a postcard of suburban tranquility. My heart felt lighter than it had in months. As I walked up the familiar stone path, clutching the expensive bottle of wine I'd brought and a briefcase containing a Thanksgiving bonus check for them, I was already grinning when I rang the doorbell. The door swung open, revealing my father, Robert. He stood there, a human wall, broad-shouldered and unmoving. His face, usually gruff but friendly, was a mask of cold stone. "Hey, Dad," I managed, my smile faltering. "Happy Thanksgiving." A frigid draft from the entryway instantly snuffed out the warmth I'd been anticipating. He didn't move. His eyes, like chips of ice, stared through me. "We don't have a son," he stated, his voice flat, devoid of all emotion. For a moment, my brain simply refused to process it. It had to be a weird, unfunny joke. I tried to laugh. "What? Dad, what are you talking about?" "It's me, Alex." Behind him, I saw movement. My brother, Mark, sauntered out from the hallway, leaning casually against the wall. A smug, triumphant smirk played on his lips, though he wasn't actually smiling. He jingled a set of keys softly in his hand. "My old bedroom keys." "Please leave," my father said. His voice was barely a whisper, but it had an icy, sharp edge that cut deeper than any shout. I looked from Mark's mocking grin to my father's vacant stare. Just a few feet away, I could smell the roasting turkey, feel the warmth radiating from the hallway, a world I was abruptly, cruelly shut out of. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. Something just snapped inside me. Or maybe something just clicked into place. I nodded, a tight, rigid movement, then turned and walked back down the stone path. The car door clicked shut. Silence. I looked at the house that held all my childhood memories, the red door, the autumn wreath. It wasn't home anymore. I pulled out my phone. A picture of my dad, Mark, and me, all grins from a past family vacation, flashed on the screen. A beautiful, perfect lie. I dragged my finger across my banking app. In the ashes of my heart, a clear, icy resolve began to form. They hadn't just closed a door. They had no idea the war they had just started. The silence in my car was suffocating. It felt like a lead blanket pressing down, making it impossible to breathe. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes? An hour? Shock and pain had blurred time into a dense, sticky fog. A frantic parade of memories rushed through my mind, searching for the first crack, the first sign that my life was built on sand. Last Christmas, I remembered. My annual bonus had just hit, enough zeros to change most people's lives. My mother, Susan, was the first person I called. It was a pattern. My success was their success. A month earlier, I'd overheard her on the phone with my aunt, talking about her knee pain. The doctor recommended a full replacement, but insurance wouldn't cover the state's top surgeon. She'd said it in her usual way, a self-sacrificing, sighing tone, just loud enough to be overheard and induce guilt. I just don't know what we'll do. Your father's so worried. I suppose I'll just have to live with the pain. 2 days later, I transferred $45,000 into her account. I didn't even think twice. Get the best surgeon, Mom, I told her. Don't worry about the cost. Your health is everything. Her voice, full of gratitude, was practically dripping through the phone. Oh, Alex, you're our angel, our savior. What would we ever do without you? You work so hard, and you're so generous to your old parents. I recalled the rush of comfort I felt then. The powerful, intoxicating sensation of being the provider, the good son, the one who could fix all their problems. It made the long hours and sleepless nights worth it. A week later, scrolling through social media, I saw a photo Mark had posted. He was standing next to a brand new, cherry red Mustang GT, gleaming in the California sun where he lived. The caption, "Early Christmas from the best parents in the world. Time to hit the road. #blessed. When I gently questioned my mother about it, her tone immediately became defensive. Oh, honey, you know Mark, he works so hard at that car dealership of his. He deserved a little treat. It wasn't that expensive. Your father, and I just wanted to see him happy. Don't be jealous, Alex. Your time for nice things will come. My time? All of it was paid for by me." I didn't say that, though. I just swallowed the bitter taste and said, I'm happy for him. My achievement, I reminded myself, was supposed to make them happy. I was happy if they were happy, I told myself. Now, sitting in that freezing car, the memory felt rancid, polluted. Then another memory, from my early years, flooded back. Crisper this time. Mark was 8, I was 12. We were playing baseball in the backyard, and Mark, who always had to be the center of attention, was swinging the bat wildly. When I told him to be careful, he just grinned. Don't worry, I'm a pro, he'd boasted. The next pitch, he swung hard, sending the ball soaring right through the big plate glass window in the living room. I froze, hearing the terrible crash, seeing the spiderweb of cracks. Mark, already an Oscar-worthy actor, immediately started crying, pointing a trembling finger at me. Alex did it. He threw it too hard. My father came storming out of the house, furious. I tried to explain, Dad, it was him. He hit it with the bat. But it was useless. My dad's gaze was fixed on me. I was the older one. I should have known better. My protests were dismissed as weak excuses. I was grounded for a month and had to use money from my summer job to help pay for the new window. Mark, for his bravery, got ice cream. Later that evening, I caught a glimpse of him through his slightly ajar bedroom door, playing with his toys, a cunning little smirk on his face. That was the first time I felt the cold, lonely, enraged sense of being the chosen scapegoat. A third memory, from college, hit me like a brick. NYU, my dream school, had accepted me, but it was expensive. Determined not to be a financial burden, I worked 2 part-time jobs, one at the library, one waiting tables, living on cheap coffee and ramen. For my 21st birthday, my parents sent me a card with $100. A week later, Mark, still in high school but just turned 18, posted a picture of the brand new SUV his amazing parents had bought him as an early graduation gift. Ready for college road trips, the caption read. I remember staring at that photo in my cramped dorm room, the smell of burnt coffee in the air, and feeling a deep, visceral sense of injustice. A gentle rap on my window broke the trance. My heart leapt. It was Mrs. Davies, our next-door neighbor. Her eyes were kind and crinkled, and she was in her late 70s. Her hugs had always been warmer than my own mother's. She'd lived next door my entire life, always asking about my job in the city with genuine concern, always slipping me cookies after school. With tears in her eyes, she told me how proud my grandmother Evelyn would have been of me. I rolled down the window, trying to look normal. She gripped her cardigan, murmuring, "Alex, dear, I saw you pull in. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't form the words. What could I say? Asterisk, my father just disowned me. My family is a lie. Asterisk, she seemed to understand. Never mind, she said softly. It's cold out here. I just wanted to say Happy Thanksgiving. I was a little surprised to see you, though. Your mother told me the whole family was heading up to Mark's new lake house for the holiday. My world tilted. Lake house? I repeated, the word jarring and unfamiliar. Mark has a lake house? Mrs. Davies looked confused. Oh, yes. Susan was going on and on about it last week at the grocery store, a beautiful place on Lake Hapakong, apparently. She said Mark's dealership was doing so well, he decided to treat the whole family to a new getaway home. She showed me pictures on her phone. It looked awfully expensive, with a big boat dock and everything. She gave my arm a pat, a tiny bit of warmth in my suddenly cold world. Well, perhaps I misunderstood. You have a good holiday, dear. And remember what your grandmother Evelyn used to say, a good heart is the only treasure that can't be stolen. She left me in a deeper, colder silence than before. I kept thinking about what she'd said about my grandmother. An irreplaceable gem, a lake house. In this economy, with my brother's salary from a mid-size auto dealership, there was no way. At that point, the pieces began to click into place, forming a picture so hideous, so grotesque, I couldn't bear to look at it. But I couldn't tear my eyes away. The transfers each month. The $2,000 for utilities and expenses, the $3,000 for the mortgage on this house, the $1,500 for Mark's car payments, the very Mustang they bought him, the $45,000 for the knee surgery, and countless other unexpected bills and minor catastrophes. My mother had explained, with such lovely reason, that I had opened a joint account for them years ago to help them manage their spending. I was the only depositor. They were the only ones who withdrew. I had trusted them completely. I was their angel, their cash cow. My hands were shaking. But suddenly, my mind was crystal clear, sharp. A cold, hard rage had joined the grief, which was still there, a raw, open wound. There was no miscommunication here. This deception was long, well thought out, and incredibly vicious. I wasn't going home. I drove to a nearby Marriott, finding the impersonal, sterile rooms strangely comforting. But comfort wasn't what I wanted. I wanted a war room. With a renewed sense of purpose, I opened my laptop and typed. I logged into my bank account, the one I had given them access to. The usual small, frequent withdrawals weren't the only ones. Scrolling back 3 months, I found it. A wire transfer. A single, massive $750,000 wire transfer to a title company. The date matched exactly when my mother had first mentioned Mark was looking at real estate. My breath caught. My vision blurred. I had bought my brother a lake house. They had stolen $750,000 from me. Money I had bled for in late nights and stressful meetings. Then they'd toss me aside like trash. With a chilling glare, I grabbed my phone. "Leo," I said, my voice steady, unnervingly quiet, when my firm's private client banker answered. "It's Alex. I need you to do something for me immediately. The joint account ending in 4758. I need you to revoke all access for Susan and Robert Vance and cancel all scheduled future transfers from my primary account. Effective immediately." Leo, ever the professional, replied, "Of course, Alex. Consider it done. Is everything okay?" "Everything is crystal clear," I said, then hung up. It was an act of defensive self-preservation, I told myself. It was just about stopping the bleeding, safeguarding the remnants of my shattered finances. I hadn't yet committed to attacking. At that point, I had no idea that the lake house was just the first step down a much deeper rabbit hole. I was standing on the edge of an abyss, unaware of the creatures lurking in the shadows below. My first 24 hours in that hotel room were a haze of coffee, room service, and the glaring blue screen of my laptop. My phone was silent. No calls, no texts from my family. It was as if I had simply vanished, and they were perfectly fine with that. That silence, more damning than any accusation, validated everything. I wasn't family. I was a resource. And now that the resource was secured in the form of $1 million lake property, I was disposable. On the second day, a number I didn't recognize broke the silence. My heart pounded as I stared at it. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a message appeared. It was my mother. My hand shook slightly as I hit play. Her voice filled the room, laden with rehearsed fear and fake tears. "Alex, honey, it's Mom. I don't know what happened. We were at the grocery store, buying some things for the lake house, and my card was declined. It was so embarrassing, Alex, right in front of everyone. And the bank sent an alert that the mortgage payment wasn't scheduled. Did you do something? Is something wrong with your accounts? Please call me baby. I'm so worried about you, baby." The term baby made my stomach churn. The acting, the phony concern, was brilliant. The seamless shift to me as the potential problem, her as the victim. She'd spent decades perfecting that script. I didn't reply. I couldn't. How would I respond? Yes, Mom. I cut you off because you stole nearly $1 million from me and then had Dad disown me. The bald-faced insanity of her call left me speechless. I knew then that I was in over my head. This was more than just family drama. The potential legal ramifications of this monumental financial event were beyond anything I could even begin to guess. Charging in blindly would only burn me, but my rage was a roaring fire. I needed a strategy. I needed experts. I had to shift my perspective from a wounded son to an investment banker. The hostile takeover of my own story was suddenly the biggest deal of my life. The first person I called was a man named Leo Vance. He was a legend in the financial community, a forensic accountant who could find a single missing dollar in a mountain of paperwork. They said he made spreadsheets sing. I knew he was the best, but he was expensive. I found his firm's number and called. "Mr. Vance," I said when his assistant put me through. "My name is Alex Callahan. I'm a senior VP at Morgan Stanley. I have a sensitive personal financial situation that requires absolute discretion and the highest level of expertise." I gave him a concise, businesslike explanation: the joint account, the illicit wire transfer, the acquisition of a major asset. I didn't mention Thanksgiving. Sharing that with a stranger felt too raw, too unfiltered. That was a vulnerability I couldn't afford. "I see," Leo said when I was done. His calm, analytical voice was a soothing balm to my jangled nerves. "This is more common than you'd think, Mr. Callahan. Greed makes people do ugly things, especially within families. My goal here is simple: to trace every dollar, document every transaction, and give you a complete, undeniable picture of where your money has gone. I will be your financial bloodhound." "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Complete, unfettered access to all of your personal and joint account statements for the previous 5 years, and a retainer." "You have it," I replied without hesitation. "Whatever you need." Hiring him felt like a weight had been lifted. I hadn't taken proactive action before. Now I was a client, not just a victim. This wasn't just me anymore. The next day, as I was driving back to my empty apartment in Manhattan, my phone buzzed with a text. It was Mark. My blood ran cold. I pulled over to the side of the road, hands clenched on the steering wheel. The message read, "Heard you stopped by. Too bad you couldn't stay for dinner at the new lake house. It's amazing. You should see it sometime." Followed by a winking emoji. It was a match put to a gallon of gasoline. That small, pixelated face. It was psychological warfare. It wasn't just arrogance. It was a victory lap, a taunt. He was rubbing my face in it, in the mansion he'd bought with my money, knowing full well that I now knew. He wasn't just enjoying his gains. He was enjoying my suffering. In a burst of white-hot rage, the last remnant of uncertainty and misguided familial loyalty vanished. This wasn't just about getting my money back. This was about justice. Leo called me the following morning. The detached serenity was gone from his voice. A keen edge of professional interest had taken its place. "Alex, I've got the initial analysis done," he said. "The $750,000 transfer for the house is clear as day." Sloppy documentation. They were overconfident. But there's something else, something much more concerning. I'm seeing a pattern of smaller, regular transfers from your joint account to a corporate account for a business called Mark's Premier Auto. That's your brother's dealership, correct? Yes, I replied, feeling my gut clench. Well, Leo continued, and I could hear him typing, these transfers don't look like normal business investments. They're structured in a very particular way. We're talking multiple transfers a week, almost always between $9,000 and $9,900. They're deliberately staying just under the $10,000 federal reporting threshold. A shiver ran down my back. That's called smithing or structuring, Leo explained. It's a tried and true method of evading financial regulatory scrutiny. And it gets worse. I've pulled his business's financial statements. I'm seeing corresponding international wire transfers going out from his business account to shell corporations with accounts in the Cayman Islands and Cyprus. These are not payments for auto parts, Alex. This is a washing machine, I muttered. Money laundering, my words tasting like ash. It has all the hallmarks of it, Leo confirmed. This is bigger than a family dispute, Alex. The lake house might just be the tip of the iceberg. The funds from your account were likely used as seed money and to maintain cash flow for a much larger operation. My professional opinion is that you're looking at a potentially serious criminal enterprise. From my 50th floor window, the sprawling vista of Central Park seemed distant and surreal as I leaned back in my office chair. A criminal enterprise. My brother, the golden child who could do no wrong, and my parents, the devoted, self-sacrificing people I grew up with. Were they just naive or complicit in their favorite son's schemes? I almost laughed at the naivete of that thought. This was no accident, not in its structure or its sheer scale. They knew. Of course, they knew. They had raised him, enabled him every step of the way, and profited from him at every turn. A wave of nausea swept over me. This was getting out of hand. A stolen nest egg wasn't the only issue anymore. The account that had been used to fund this had my name on it. I, Alex Callahan of Morgan Stanley, could be implicated. Suddenly, my future, my license, my entire career was on the precipice. My thoughts raced. I still clung to the desperate, stupid hope that this was all some huge, horrible misunderstanding. That Mark was just making stupid, not malicious, choices and was in over his head, blindly enabled by my parents. Leo, hold on, I heard myself say, my voice thin and distant. Let's not jump to conclusions. For now, let's just focus on the personal funds. Let's just track what they spend on themselves, the vacations, the shopping. I need to think. Ignoring this won't make it go away, Alex, Leo replied, his voice stern but sympathetic. You need to decide how you want to proceed. My heart pounded frantically against my ribs as I hung up the phone. The ground beneath me was crumbling, and I was standing on the edge. I had to choose, preserve some warped, shattered notion of family, risking my own career collapse, or jump to see what lay in the abyss below, even if it meant taking them all down with me. I still didn't have the courage to make that leap. I kept hoping, praying, for an excuse not to, an explanation that would never materialize. I spent a week in suspended animation. I went to work. I chaired meetings. I looked at market trends. I wore my professional mask. But it was all a charade. Leo was sending me encrypted emails, details of my real life. Each one a new spreadsheet, a new entry in the long, ugly ledger of my family's betrayal. He complied with my request, focusing only on their personal expenses. It was a horror show, though. A $5,000 Gucci shopping spree for my mom. A pair of Rolex watches, $15,000 for both my parents. A $30,000 first-class vacation to Italy for my parents and Mark, complete with social media pictures of them toasting champagne glasses, posted just days after I'd wired money for a plumbing emergency. My money, paying for a life I wasn't even asked to see, much less live. But all of it was overshadowed by the bigger issue of the questionable corporate dealings. Leo's warning about a criminal enterprise encircled my thoughts like a thorny vine, strangling any hope of a simple solution. Was I shielding criminals? Was I complicit if I did nothing, if I tried to keep this a family matter? The tipping point, the moment that pushed me from indecision to definitive action, came from an unexpected source. Leo, in his meticulous effort to build a comprehensive financial picture of the family to understand the full extent of my losses, asked during one of our calls, in a purely academic tone, "Alex, do you know of any other significant family assets, inheritances, trusts, anything like that from the past decade? I need to understand what they legitimately had in order to understand what they've taken." Deep within me, the question struck a harsh, resonant chord. "My maternal grandmother," I said softly, my mouth feeling dry. "She passed away about 10 years ago. Her name was Evelyn. We were very close. In a home where I always felt like I had to prove myself, Grandma Evelyn was my sanctuary. She was the one who gave love freely. The only one who truly saw me. She'd spend hours listening to my childhood stories about school, my dreams of moving to New York. She bought me my first proper suit for a high school debate tournament. 'You look like a captain of industry, Alex,' she'd exclaimed, pride shining in her eyes. 'Don't you ever let anyone make you feel small.' Her modest, but comfortable estate was mostly due to her late husband's prudent investments. I remembered, in the solemn days after her funeral, my parents telling me that she had bequeathed the majority of her wealth, almost $2 million, to Mark. My mother had squeezed my hand, murmuring, 'It's what she wanted, honey,' her eyes brimming with crocodile tears. She knew you were going to be so successful on your own. She always said you had the Midas touch. She wanted to give Mark a little head start in life. It had hurt at the moment, a sharp, deep agony of being passed over for the final time. But I'd accepted it. It fit the family narrative. Mark was the one who needed help. Alex was the independent one. Leo drew me out of my trance. And this inheritance? Did you ever see the official will?" "No," I said, feeling a weird chill creep up my back. "My parents handled everything. They were the executors." The other end of the line was silent. "Alex," Leo said, his voice kind but firm, like a surgeon delivering bad news. "I think you need to see the will. Not a copy from your parents. An official, court-certified copy from the county surrogate's court where your grandmother passed away." The chilling sensation became a surge of icy fear. I took a personal day the following day. I told my office I had a family emergency, aware of the terrible irony. I made the tower drive to the county courthouse in the small town where my grandmother had spent her final years. With clammy hands, I filled out the request form. My signature looked like a stranger's handwriting. The clerk, a bored-looking woman, silently took the form and disappeared into a back room. I waited for what seemed like an eternity. She returned with a thin, beige file, its pages yellowed. "Evelyn Callahan Estate," she murmured, thudding it onto the counter. I carried it to a quiet nook of the records room, the scent of dust and old paper filling the air. My heart hammered in my ears. I opened the file. Through the thick legal jargon of whereas and hereby, I searched for it. The final declaration. How her assets were distributed. "I give, devise, and bequeath the entirety of my residuary estate, without encumbrance or condition, to my beloved grandson, Alex Martin Callahan." To Alex. To me. With a soft rustle, the file dropped from my numb fingers onto the floor. The world fell silent. It wasn't just the $750,000 for the lake house. It wasn't the incessant lies or the extravagant spending. This was it. They had stood with me at the funeral of my grandmother, whom I loved above all others, and they had lied, looking me in the eye. They had stolen my entire past, forged a phony will, falsified documents. My last connection to the only family member who had ever shown me genuine affection. While I was feeding them thousands each month to keep their heads above water, they had stolen $2 million that was legally mine and used it as the seed money for Mark's criminal business. The sorrow was so great, so deep, it went beyond tears. The air was sucked out of my chest like a black hole. This wasn't an act of betrayal on Thanksgiving. My entire life had been this betrayal. I was a different man when I left the courthouse. The injured son who had agonized over reporting his family had been incinerated by the dreadful, enlightening fire of the truth. In his place stood a tool of cold, unadulterated justice. Just like clockwork, my phone buzzed. The text above it read, "From your neighbor, Mrs. Davies." She said, "You should see this. Please be careful, son." I didn't recognize the number that sent me the video message. I hit play. The video was blurry, obviously from a security camera, timestamped Thanksgiving Day, minutes after I'd driven away. It was aimed at my parents' front yard. After my dad shut the red door, he turned to face my mom and Mark, who had come out onto the porch. They were all giddy, laughing uncontrollably. I was shocked the first time I saw it. My blood froze as I watched it a second time. My spirit turned to stone as I watched it a third. My mother, Susan, the martyr, wiped a fictitious tear of laughter from her eye. "Oh, the look on his face," she said, her crisp, clear laugh caught on tape. "You were perfect, Robert. So cold." My father, a vicious smirk on his face, growled, "He served his purpose. He won't be a problem anymore." Then my brother, Mark, the king of his dilapidated little castle, threw an arm around them both. "Don't worry," he said, in a condescending tone. "The cash cow might be gone, but he left us a mansion full of milk." They clinked imaginary glasses, their laughter echoing in the chilly November air, and went back inside. I didn't think twice. With very steady hands, I dialed my lawyer, Sarah Chen. She was a shark, the best litigator in New York. It was time to let her hunt. "Change of plans," I stated, my voice devoid of emotion. "Sarah, we're no longer on the defensive." I took a deep breath. "They didn't just steal my money, Sarah. They stole my entire life. And I want it back. Everything." The next 48 hours moved with the swiftness and precision of a military operation. My lawyer, Sarah, was incredible. She absorbed the new information, the stolen $2 million, the forged will, the security camera footage, with a grim, focused intensity that was both frightening and reassuring. We met in her sterile, modern conference room, high above the city. She touched the certified copy of the real will. "This changes everything, Alex," she said, her voice steely. "This is the linchpin. This isn't just a financial dispute anymore. This is felony grand larceny, forgery, and conspiracy. Especially when combined with what your accountant has found, this isn't just a case. This is a slam dunk." She paused, her piercing eyes meeting mine. "This is a racketeering case." The phrase hung in the air, menacing and heavy. Racketeering. It's the kind of term you hear in mafia movies, not in connection with your family from suburban New Jersey who sent annual Christmas cards. With coffee in hand and a chilling sense of purpose, we worked into the night. We assembled everything into one scathing dossier. Leo's forensic investigation, now expanded to include money laundering, with clear charts tracing the flow of my inheritance money through Mark's Premier Auto and offshore. The side-by-side comparison of the faked will and the authentic one, highlighted and annotated. An affidavit from me, notarized and sworn, detailing every dollar stolen, every lie told. And the crowning jewel, Mrs. Davies' video file, a digital record of their malevolent intent. The man we met was Agent Miller from the FBI's white-collar crime division. He was a tall, commanding presence with weary eyes that had seen every conceivable form of human greed. The room we sat in was sterile, government issue, smelling of stale coffee. Miller listened to our presentation in silence, his face an inscrutable mask of professional cynicism. He'd seen family disputes before, sons and daughters making wild accusations. Sarah made her points with surgical precision. Leo used his laser pointer to guide him through the financial maze, highlighting the offshore accounts and structured deposits. Then Sarah flipped her laptop over. "And finally, Agent Miller," she said, "the defendants in their own words." She hit play. The faint sound of my family's laughter filled the quiet room. Miller leaned forward, narrowing his eyes at the screen. He saw my brother's cocky declaration about the cash cow, my father's ruthless smile, my mother's exuberant joy. He saw it all. Then he gestured for Sarah to play it again. When it was done the second time, he leaned back in his chair and looked at me. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of something in his weary eyes. It wasn't sympathy. It was a tired kind of acknowledgement. He realized, then, that I wasn't just another disgruntled heir. I was the victim of a long-term, well-orchestrated scheme. Mr. Callahan, he said, his voice gravelly. We've had Mark's Premier Auto on our radar for a few months. Suspected vehicle export fraud, shipping stolen luxury cars overseas with false VINs. Big money, very messy. But we were missing the funding source. We couldn't figure out how he was bankrolling the operation. He drummed his finger across the thick dossier. You just handed it to us on a silver platter. He rose to his feet and held out a hand. Thank you for coming forward. It takes courage to do what you just did. We'll take it from here. The next few days were the quietest, most painful of my life. I didn't know when the storm would break or how, but I knew it was coming. I lived in a state of suspended dread, going through the motions of my daily life. Every time my phone rang, I winced, thinking it was one of them, somehow aware of what I had done. A week later, on a Tuesday morning, the call came. It was Agent Miller. Alex, he said, his voice serious. Just wanted to let you know. Warrants have been served this morning. Multiple locations. After hanging up, I switched on the television. And there it was. Live aerial footage showed a squadron of black SUVs swarming the lake house, the one I'd inherited. Despite the shakiness of the camera, the scene was clear. Tactical-clad FBI agents pouring onto the property. The camera zoomed in on Mark as he was led out in handcuffs, his face a mask of unfathomable hatred. Without his trademark smirk, he looked pathetic and small. Then the feed switched to my childhood home. The welcoming red door was now fractured near the lock, wide open. My father, Robert, stood on the porch, his face slack and pale with shock, his shoulders drooping in defeat. An agent stood on either side of him. A moment later, my mother, Susan, was led out. This time, her face wasn't acting. The meticulously crafted facade of the delicate, patient matriarch had shattered. All that remained was raw, ugly dread. The news anchor's voice continued to drone, using terms like multi-million-dollar vehicle export and money laundering ring, raids in 3 counties, seizure of assets, multiple arrests. No one ever mentioned my name. I was an unnamed source, a ghost in the justice system. From the sterile silence of my apartment, with a glass of water trembling in my hand, I watched it all. There was no joy, no sense of triumph. Just a vast, empty space where a family once stood. Then came the most bizarre part of all. As the agents loaded my father into a car, he looked up, startled, noticing the TV helicopter hanging overhead. He knew everyone was watching. A sudden, desperate rage twisted his expression. It was him, he yelled, his voice raw, gesturing back to the house where Mark had been taken into custody. It was all him. He was going to run with all the money and leave us with nothing. He's the monster. His face was held on camera for too long. The last piece of the puzzle clicked into place in that instant. It wasn't just a criminal family. Every viper in the nest was ready to turn on the others to save themselves. My father wasn't merely a complicit party, an enabler. He had been on the verge of betrayal himself. The lies upon which they had built their lives were finally crumbling, burying them all in the debris. I turned the TV off. Silence. In my apartment, it was the sound of both an ending and a beginning. I watched the aftermath from a distance. The storm, however, was all my own. While my name wasn't in the initial reports, the legal process required my formal testimony. The story became a minor sensation in the world of financial news. Prominent bankers' family tied to massive fraud ring. The headlines were lurid, the rumors wild. My firm, Morgan Stanley, was incredibly supportive. Their top legal counsel called me in for a meeting. With Sarah's meticulous documentation, I presented the full story. Within a week, their internal investigation cleared me of any wrongdoing, recognizing me as both the primary victim and the informant who exposed the entire scam. They offered me all the resources I needed, including paid leave, and shielded me from the media. Take care of yourself, Alex, my managing director had said, genuine concern in his eyes. Family is complicated. But the real fallout wasn't professional. It was personal. It came in the form of calls from a blocked number. Answer the county jail calls. Mark's was the first. I accepted, morbidly curious, needing to hear it for myself. His voice, stripped of all its natural sweetness, was a venomous hiss. "You son of a bitch," he spat, crackling over the line. "You did this. You ruined us. You were always jealous, weren't you? You couldn't stand that they loved me more, that I was the one who got the breaks." "The breaks?" I asked, my voice low. "You mean the $2 million you stole from my grandmother's estate?" A sputtering sound from his end. "You'll pay for this, Alex," he snarled as he regained his composure. "I don't know how, but when I get out, you're a dead man. I swear to God." Calmly, I hit the end call button. There was nothing to say. He was a cornered animal, all he knew was to bite. His character was as hollow as his threats. My father called a day later. The second time. He didn't sound angry. It was something worse. It was confused, pitiful. His voice was frail-aged. All he murmured was, "Alex, why? She was your mother. I'm your father. We're your family. You don't do this to your family." "You told me you didn't have a son, Dad," I countered flatly, holding a mirror up to his own statement. The static and commotion of the jail filled the long pause on the other end. Finally, he said, "It was for your own good. Ryan, he was into some bad things. We were trying to protect you from it all, a lie so flimsy it was transparent." I laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Protect me? By stealing my inheritance? By letting him use our joint account to launder money? By throwing me out of my own home?" I left the questions hanging. "You weren't protecting me, Dad. You were protecting your investment, your golden boy. Turns out he was about to cash you out too. Goodbye, Dad." I cut off his pathetic protest by hanging up. That night came the last call, the one I had anticipated and dreaded. My mom. My heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest, I let the phone ring 4 times. Each ring was a lifetime. Then I answered. Her voice was a flood of frantic tears, a performance she had perfected over 32 years. "Alex. Oh, Alex. Thank God. Baby, you have to help us. This is all a terrible, terrible mistake. Mark is solely to blame. He tricked us. We're just poor, plain old people. We didn't know what he was doing with the dealership. He forced us into everything, even the lake house. We're victims, just like you. I just loved my son too much as a mother. Couldn't I understand?" A ghost of the little boy who just wanted his mother's approval was almost palpable. I remembered a day when I was 7, sick with the flu. She'd sat by my bed all afternoon, putting cool cloths on my forehead, reading stories. Was that a lie too? For a split second, at the memory, I hesitated. Feeling a fracture, her voice shifted. "Please, baby," she pleaded, dropping to a whispery plea. "You have the money. You can hire the best lawyers. You can make this go away. Just tell them you made a mistake. Tell them you were confused. We can fix this. We can be a family again." That was it. A chilling clarity replaced the hesitation. Her first instinct, even now, was to ask me to lie for them, to compromise my integrity for their convenience. I let her finish. Let the final sob echo through the quiet. Then I inhaled. "I saw the video, Mom," I said. The crying stopped abruptly. A dead silence on her end. "I saw you laughing," I continued, my voice as steady and serene as a frozen lake. "I heard you call me your cash cow. I heard you say how perfect Dad was when he threw me out." A stifled gasp, like a fish being dragged out of water, came from the phone. "And I saw Grandma Evelyn's will," I delivered the final blow. The real one. The one that left everything to me. "The $2 million you stole from me the week after her funeral, while telling me how much she loved Mark." Now, the silence was so profound I could hear the hum of the prison phone system. She couldn't speak. The master manipulator had nothing left to say. The victim's well of lies had run dry. On Thanksgiving Day, I continued quietly, "You made your choice." Every word was a nail in the coffin of our relationship. You told me who you were, and I finally believe you. This is me making my choice. Her voice was a pitiful murmur, the last sigh of a dying force. "Alex, please." "Goodbye, Mom," I said, then hung up the phone. I placed the phone on the countertop. I stood in my quiet kitchen, the city lights outside my window glimmering like a million cold, distant stars. The anger was gone. The sorrow. Just a vast, silent, complete emptiness. After 32 years, The bonds that had shackled, suffocated, and defined me were finally broken. I was utterly, completely alone. And for the first time in my life, I was free. The ensuing year was one of quiet, methodical reconstruction. The legal case against my family, a distant engine of justice, was no longer in my hands. I testified in a series of depositions, recounting the facts in a cool, collected voice that seemed to belong to someone else. I felt like I was talking about a fictional character, not my own life. The world had a certain expectation of me, either a broken man lamenting his family, or a vindictive son reveling in his triumph. I was neither. I was simply starting over. One of the first things I did was put my Manhattan penthouse up for sale. Once, the sprawling apartment with its expansive views was a monument to my achievements, a symbol of my success. Now it felt like a golden cage, a monument to a lifetime of trying to earn the approval of undeserving people. The sale went through quickly. I didn't look back. I moved to Brooklyn, to a smaller, cozier apartment in a family-friendly neighborhood with parks. It had a tiny balcony overlooking the bridge and space for plants. It felt more like home than the penthouse ever had. I also started seeing Dr. Hayes, a kind and insightful therapist. I'd resisted at first, convincing myself I could handle it alone. It was the old script I'd always lived by. But in her peaceful office, filled with books and soft lighting, I finally broke down during our first session. I finally gave myself permission to unpack the 32 years of emotional baggage I'd been carrying. I talked about the constant pressure to be perfect, the isolation of being the one who always had to be capable, and the deep-seated fear that had haunted me my whole life, the feeling that I was, somehow, fundamentally unlovable. "You weren't their scapegoat because you were flawed, Alex," she told me during one session, her words hitting me like a physical blow. "You were their scapegoat because you were strong. They needed someone to carry the weight of their own inadequacies, their own failures and deceits, and you were the only one in the family capable of doing it." Her words were illuminating. They reframed my entire past. I wasn't a victim because I was weak. It was my resilience that made me a target. It was not my burden to bear. It had never been. A few months later, my lawyer, Sarah, called to inform me of the final ruling. Mark was found guilty of fraud, money laundering, and racketeering, and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Robert and Susan, my parents, were both sentenced to 8 years in prison for conspiracy and grand larceny. In his sentencing remarks, the judge had been particularly harsh on them, noting the deep and deliberate financial and emotional betrayal of their own son, who had been nothing but generous. "Thank you for the update, Sarah." Hanging up, I didn't feel a sense of triumph. Just the quiet turning of a heavy page, the ultimate, definitive conclusion to a difficult chapter. The inheritance, not the jail terms, was the most significant part of the resolution. The $2 million, along with 10 years of interest, was returned to me following a protracted civil lawsuit that ran concurrently with the criminal prosecution. For a while, the funds sat untouched in a separate account. It felt like blood money. It wasn't what I wanted. Then, while seeing Dr. Hayes, an idea sparked. I refused to let them taint my grandmother's legacy. I was going to take it back. Sarah and I worked together to establish a nonprofit organization. We named it the Evelyn Foundation, in memory of my grandmother. Its mission was clear and simple, to provide pro bono financial and legal assistance to senior citizens who had fallen victim to financial fraud, particularly by family members. I funded the initial endowment with the recovered $2 million. It was a way to transform the ugliest part of my story into a source of good. By protecting people like her, I could honor the only family member who had ever truly loved me. A few months after the foundation's creation, my managing director at Morgan Stanley summoned me into his office. "Alex," he said, "we've been impressed with how you've handled everything, with your integrity and resilience. We have an opening in our London office, executive director. It's a big step up, a chance for a fresh start, a new city, a new continent, a clean slate." I didn't even have to think about it. The universe, it seemed, was finally aligning with the new path I was trying to forge. "I'll take it," I replied. And for the first time in what felt like forever, a genuine smile spread across my face. I felt lighter than I had in years. As I packed up my Brooklyn apartment, I wasn't escaping my history. I had confronted it, dismantled it, and reclaimed what was mine. Now, I was moving toward my future, one I was creating on my own terms, built on honesty and integrity. 1 year to the day after I had stood on that cold doorstep, alone and rejected, I stood in the bright, warm kitchen of my apartment in Kensington, London. The air wasn't filled with the scent of my mother's turkey or the underlying stress of a family gathering. It was filled with the sound of easy, genuine laughter and the delicious aroma of food my friends had prepared. I was hosting Thanksgiving. So much had changed in that year. Moving to London had been the best decision of my life. I loved the city, its history, and the rhythm of my own unique life. My work, while fulfilling and challenging, no longer defined me. I no longer felt the need to wear heavy armor to prove my worth through achievement. I was just doing my job. I looked around the table I had set. No blood relatives were present. This was a different kind of family, one chosen, not given. There was Mrs. Davies, my honored guest, whom I had flown out first class, her gentle eyes gleaming with a youthful joy. "I've never been on an airplane before," she'd exclaimed, and her unadulterated happiness was contagious. She held court, telling stories from my early childhood, stories I'd even forgotten. My forensic accountant, Leo Vance, and his wife were there. Spreadsheets and depositions had brought us together, and a true friendship had blossomed. I appreciated his sharp wit and passionate sense of justice. He raised his glass to me across the table, a knowing smile on his face. My lawyer, Sarah, was there too. She had been my general, my rock, in a battle I never meant to fight. Tonight, she was just my friend, doubled over with laughter at one of Leo's jokes. And from my therapist, Dr. Hayes, came a beautiful arrangement of fall flowers with a simple note, "To new beginnings and new traditions. I admire you." As we all sat down, the laughter fading into a friendly buzz of conversation, I picked up my drink. Everyone fell silent, turning to me with smiles. "I don't have a big speech," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I just want to thank all of you. A year ago, standing outside a house I thought was home, I felt like I had lost everything. I thought my whole life had been a lie. I looked directly at these people, who had shown me kindness, loyalty, and truth in my darkest hour. The therapist who helped me heal, the professionals who championed me, the neighbor who watched out for me. But I was wrong," I added, a genuine smile forming on my lips. "I didn't lose a family that day. I escaped a prison. And in the years since, I've learned that real family isn't about the blood you share. It's about the respect you give, the trust you earn, and the truth you choose to live by. I used to think my value was something I had to prove, something that was measured by the numbers in my bank account or by the approval of others. Now I know my value is measured by the peace in my own soul and by the people I'm lucky enough to share my table with. And that's something no one can ever steal." I lifted my glass. "To the chosen table. To new beginnings." We clinked our glasses together, the sound of crystal echoing in the warm air, and a chorus of "To the chosen table" reverberated around the room. For the first time in my life, I felt completely, wholeheartedly, truly at home.